ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is Tuesday. And basically, we're going to start the next section of Chapter 1, 1.4. And then, so the plan is start 1.4 today. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we will review the chapter, review the section, finish it up, 1.4, and then Thursday, you'll review 1.3 and 1.4. We'll take a quiz on Friday. All right, so here we go. This section, 1.4, is about absolute value. All right, now hopefully some of you remember what absolute value is. Looks a little bit like this. Or we can have a negative in there. It's just basically two bars around the number. And let's go and read the definition here. It is the distance from 0 and is always greater than or equal to 0. So let me draw a number line real quick, because many of you are thinking, well, just isn't absolute value, doesn't that just mean that everything's going to be positive? Well, check this out. Oops, wow, I could count. That's awful, but all right. Horribly spaced, but it'll make the point. So it says that it's the distance from 0. So that's why I draw a number line. We're going to start at 0. Let me pick a different color here and check this out. So if I'm starting at 0 and I'm going to walk to 3, 1, 2, 3. Obviously here we went into the positive, and so it's 3, right? That's the distance from 0. Now that's walk. Pick a different color again. Now let's walk from 0 to -3. 1, 2, 3. Now, our position is at -3, right? But how far did we walk? When you think about walking somewhere, you don't think about negative direction. Even if you walk backwards, you're not walking in a negative direction. If you've walked 3 meters forward, you've walked 3 meters. If you've walked 3 meters backward, you've also walked 3 meters. So that's what absolute value is. It says it's the distance from 0 and is always greater than or equal to 0. So you're right. If you thought absolute value means it's always going to be positive. The result of an absolute value will always be positive or 0. And basically what it's saying is it's the distance from 0. So -3 and 3, absolute value, are the same distance from 0, right? Even though one went in a different direction, you're going the same amount of space. All right? So that's absolute value. Extraneous solutions, it says, is a solution that does not work. So when you're solving these, we're going to solve these in a special way. When you do that, not all of the solutions that you get are going to work. So you have to make sure to check them depending on the situation. Now, this is only going to happen for special situations, so just make sure you're paying attention for those. We'll go over them, right? So here we go. Solving an absolute value equation. To solve anything in an absolute value, it gives you ax plus b. Just remember, a and b would be replaced with numbers. And so would c. When c is greater than 0, this is what you're going to do. You're going to split this into 2 separate equations, basically. And look at what is different. In the absolute value, everything stays the same. And then on the other side, the result, you're going to keep one positive and make one negative, or at least make them opposite. All right, and then you're going to solve. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. It says when c is less than 0, so as in if our answer is negative, say it's -1, this would have no solution because an absolute value will always end up being positive. Okay, so let me give you some examples here. If I said x, the absolute value of x equals 4, right? What could go in here? It could either be a positive 4 or a -4, right? Because the absolute value will be positive. That is why when we go to solve these, we have to create 2 different situations, because we have to account for the positive inside that will result in 4 and the negative that will result in 4. Okay, so that is why we have to create 2 situations to solve these. Now, let me give you a situation for the second thing where it says if the answer if the result is negative, or if the other side of the equal sign is negative. So let me ask you this, what works in here? You're thinking, oh, well, -4 works, right? Well, what's the problem? The absolute value of -4 is 4. And if we plug in a 4, it's just going to be +4. So there's no answer here because the absolute value is always going to be positive. So there's nothing here, nothing that you can plug in that will equal -4. All right, so let's do 2 examples here. I think it'll become much more clear if you're not sure. So here we go. All right, so x minus 4 equals, the absolute value of x minus 4 equals 6. Okay, now, one of the cases that we have to deal with is just the regular old case. Take it out of the absolute value, or take away the absolute value, keep the 6 positive. All right, had a little computer freak out there. There we go. All right, x minus 4 equals 6. Solved. All right, so x equals 10. All right, if you want to check it, 10 minus 4 is 6. The absolute value of 6 is, in fact, 6. That is one of our answers. But is there a second answer? This is how we're going to check. So remember, the inside could also be negative. So what you're going to do is you're going to make the other side negative and watch what happens. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying, well, why don't we do that to the absolute value? Because remember, we're solving for x, so it ends up switching sides because we're adding everything to this side. So we need to make this side negative in order to account for that. All right, so the answer is -2. Now, does that work? -2, plug it in, -2 minus 4 is -6. The absolute value of -6 is 6. Both of these answers work. These are both answers. And you can put a little or in between them because you're going to plug one in or the other, but they both work. So you have to have them both. All right, now take a look at this situation. It says the absolute value of 3x plus 1 equals -5. Now, you could go through and solve this. You could. And you'll get an answer. And when you go to plug it in, it won't work. Like, for example, the answer would be -2. You'd plug it in, and you'd get 5. You'd get the answer +5. Anything coming out of this thing is going to give you a positive answer. And so it won't be balanced. It won't be equal to this side ever. So this is a no solution. If you see a negative across from an absolute value in an equation, you automatically know. Like I said, you can solve it, but just plug in the number, you'll see it doesn't work. Because no matter what, you're never going to get a negative coming from this side to equal it. All right, those are practice. All right, one more example then. So when it comes to absolute values, let me check something real quick. Okay. When it comes to absolute value in an equation, anything outside the absolute value just needs to be moved. Okay, so this -10, we gotta get it across the equal sign. So add the 10. We need the absolute value all by itself to deal with it. Okay, and the reason for that is we're going to be messing with negatives and positives, and if you don't have the absolute value by itself, you're not going to be working with the correct number. So now we have a 6 on this side, right? So now we can do our 2 separate equations. We have the regular one, 3x plus 9 equals 6, and then we have the 3x plus 9 equals -6. And then you just solve those. Subtract the 9, add the 3. I believe this one ends up being x equals -1. Because you subtract, oops. Come on. Dang it. Come on. See if I can undo that one. Hey, there we go. I believe believe it equals -1 because you're subtracting the 9, -3, good, and then minus 9 here, -15, so this would be x equals -5. I believe those are your two answers. One other little tip I have for you. Now, these are the problems you're going to do, but if you see this, do not distribute. No distribute. Do not distribute. All right. Now, parentheses, think of it like a cell in science. It's permeable. Things can get into the cell if they need to. This absolute value is like a wall. It's like a rock. This 4 is not to go in there. All right. So the first thing you need to do is it's 4 times the absolute value, so divide by 4. So many of you are already doing this with the regular distribution problems. Like if it said this, we could distribute, right? But some of you are already dividing by 4. Well, you're ahead of me. You're ahead of the game. The absolute value cannot be distributed into. So divide by 4, and then rewrite it, and then you're good to go. Then you can do our 2 separate sets. All right, so ultimately with absolute value, get it by itself. If it's already by itself, you can do the two different equations. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll deal with that type of problem on Wednesday. All right, take care, guys.